Hello and good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to class today. So, last week when we were in math, we talked a lot about our different counting strategies that we use to figure out how many objects or things are in a set or a group, right? So, we did a lot of work using this pasta, and we used our different counting strategies to help us figure out how many there were, right? So last week we were focusing on counting different things. This week we're going to focus on counting out loud. So does anybody know how far do you need to be able to count by the end of kindergarten? What number should you be able to count to? Do you know? It's 100. You need to be able to count to 100, all right? So I want us to look at this and read this out loud with me. I can count to 100. Now I'm going to read it one more time, and I want to make sure that you're reading with me, okay? I can count to 100. 100. Now, some of you might be thinking, I already know how to count to 100, and that's awesome. Some of you might be thinking, oh no, I can only count to 20. I only know how to count to 10. But you know what? That's okay. Because I'm telling you right now, if you know how to count to 10, we're going to learn some different ways to help you to figure out how you can count to 100. Because I promise you, if you can count to 10, you are able to count to 100. And you know how I know that? Because numbers do kind of a cool thing. So I'm going to bring up right now our hundreds chart. Now this one might look a little bit different than the one that we were using in class, but it's the same thing. It says our hundreds chart. So I'm going to hold this up, and I just want you to take a look at it. And I want you to think, what do you notice about the hundreds chart? What do you notice? Do you see any patterns? Some of you might be thinking, I notice that it's green or the letters are red, and that's great. But what do you notice about the numbers that you see? Can I tell you what I see in the numbers? I see that the numbers happen in the same order over and over and over again. So let's take a look. Let's only look at the top row for now. I'll cover these up. There we go. We're only looking at the top row. And I know everyone can count with me. So let's count these rows, or this row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can all do that. Let's look at the second row and see if you see anything that looks the same or maybe a little bit different. Is there anything that looks different on the second row? So not the same. Is there anything that's new or looks different than the first row? Here's the first row, here's the second row. What looks different about this one? The numbers are bigger, right? And it's not just one number in it. You now have 2 digits, right? There's 2 numbers that we can see that make the same one, right? So let's take a look. Does anyone know what this one is? We left off at 10, so what comes after 10? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Those numbers sound a little bit different than the first ones, don't they? But look at them. This is, if we cover up the very first number in each of these, you can see 1. What happens if I cover up this one? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, And then that one doesn't say 10, but they both end in that same number. And what number is that? What number does that end in? A 0, right? And can I tell you a secret about our hundreds chart? It happens the entire way down. So look, there's 1s in this whole column. There's 2s in this whole column. There's 3s in this whole column. It goes in the same order every time. So you can use those patterns to help you count all the way up to 100, right? So when you're reading our numbers, after that tricky second row, you say the numbers in the same order, but the beginning part changes. That's the only part that changes. What's the last number in this row? The one that I'm pointing to right here. What is that number? Number 20. So do you know what this row starts with? The entire row? It starts with 20. So let's see if we can count this one together. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Does that one have a 2 in the front? So that must be a different number, right? What number is that? 30. So if we go to the next row, what are those numbers going to start with? Are they still going to start with 20? No, they start with the last one that we left off, 30. And guess what? The numbers go in the same order again. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. This pattern happens the whole way down. So do you know what that means? If you can count up to 10, if you know what those numbers are, and if you can do that tricky second row because they sound a little bit different, there's only one more thing that you need to learn to be able to count the whole way, all the way up to 100. And that's these end numbers. Do we notice anything about these end numbers? What do we notice about these? Is there anything that's the same? They all end in a number, right? They all end in 0. What about the one that it starts with? What do we notice about that? That still goes in the same order, doesn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But this isn't just 2. That's not just 7, right? They have different names. These are our 10s, right? So we are able to count by 10s by looking at this end row. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And the last one is 100, right? So if you're able to remember those different patterns, if you have a hundreds chart with you, you're able to count no problem at all. And once you know the patterns in your head, you don't even need the hundreds chart to help you anymore, right? You just need to remember those cool patterns that we learned. Now, I want to talk about something before we finish. Look at these end numbers again. We called those our 10s. When we counted them, we were counting by 10s, right? Who knows when would we want to count by 10s? Why would it be helpful? Sometimes we like to count by 1s, which we were doing before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes we like to count by 10s. Why would we count by 10s? Does anyone have any good guesses? If you do, I'm going to show you something and you can see if you are right. If you don't know, this might help you figure out why. So I'm going to lay all of these down and I'll tilt my computer so you can see in just a second. Okay. So I'm going to tilt this down and take a look at these. Does this look familiar to you at all? It might. It doesn't look exactly like the ones we have, but they're pretty similar. These are like the cubes that we use to connect, right? But I don't have any of the cubes, so I just printed out some paper. Can you help me count how many cubes are in here? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 cubes in one of these. If we know that there are 10 cubes in each of these, would it be faster if we wanted to figure out how many cubes we had in all? Would it be faster for us to count 1, 2, 3, 4 for all of them? Or would it be faster if we counted each one of these 10 rods at a time? What would be a faster way to count how many we had in all? The tens, right? Do you remember another time that we used to count by tens? Do you remember? We did it during math in the very beginning of the day. During calendar, right? We would count the days that we've been in school and we would count by tens using our little wooden 10 rods. This is the same thing. So I want you to take a look at these and remember, each one has 10 of them, so we don't need to count each one of these individually. We can count them a group at a time. So when we start counting these and we want to figure out how many of these little cubes, these little squares we have in all, are we counting 1, 2, 3? No, because there's more than 3 in just one of these. So we need to count by tens because there are 10 in one of the rods. So I want you to help me count by tens. Every time I move one over, one of our counting strategies, you're going to count by tens out loud. Ready? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So, you know how to count by tens in 2 different ways now. You can count by tens by one, or not count by tens. You can count to 100 in 2 different ways now. You can count by ones, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or you can count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Right? So now you have 2 different ways that you can do that. So remember, in the very beginning of our lesson, we took a look at this. And this is what you should be able to say at the end of what we were just learning. I can count to 100. And if you're still having a little bit of trouble, that's okay. You just need to practice. And you can count anything. You can count, if you're in your house, maybe you see your family's shoes. You can count their shoes. You can count the trees outside. You can count the cars that you see in the street. You can count your stuffed animals. You can count the plates you have at home. You can count anything. So that's what you can do. You can keep practicing your counting, all right? Now, I'm going to see you on Zoom in a little bit. But before you do that, go back to the website and check out the choice board and see if there's any of those activities that you want to do to keep practicing counting.